Alright, this is my second video for those of y'all keeping track. This time we're going to talk about the spirit of fear and what that looks like in a Christian's life and what that does to a Christian life and what we can do about it. The example I'm going to use is not an example that I really want to use. It's the pandemic, and the reason I don't really want to use that example is because it's a very polarizing issue. It's insanely political, and people have strong opinions in one way or the other about it. And what this video won't be is it won't be a video where I take sides. I'm not going to do that. I do have my own opinions, and I can share them with you later. But that's not what this video is going to be about. What it's going to be about is the proper Christian response to the pandemic and other things that happen in our lives, other storms we go through, and just the correct attitudes to have and what we should be doing about things that frighten us, things that scare us. So I figured the best way to start this out would be with a Bible verse about fear, and one of the more potent ones comes from 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And what that means is, whatever situation you're facing in life, we need to do it with power and love and with a sound mind. God did not give us the spirit of fear. So if we're feeling fearful, if the spirit of fear has come on us, that is not of God, and God did not put that on us. So we don't need to be operating under the spirit of fear. If you're afraid, God's not making you that way. Now, fear in and of itself, as far as it is a human emotion, it is not a sin to be afraid of something. What makes it, what can make fear a sin, and what the spirit of fear is when it gets to the point where you're crippled by it and you stop doing the things that you're supposed to be doing. You either you neglect yourself or you neglect others, and you let that fear drive a wedge between you and God. That's when it becomes a sin. Merely feeling fear or being afraid is not a sin in and of itself. If you're afraid of the virus, if you're afraid of whatever you're afraid of, that in and of itself is not a sin. So don't get me misunderstood. Now, now what we should do, the whole pandemic thing, the proper response that we're supposed to have during this pandemic is we're told that, wearing a mask, social distancing, even getting a vaccine. These are things we should do. Now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with wearing a mask and trying to keep apart from each other. Those things, just because you wear a mask doesn't mean that you're living in fear. Now, for some people it's like that, but it doesn't have to be like that. Wearing a mask is just taking a precaution. Now, there's something we have to realize is that there's a really big difference between living in the state of fear, living under the spirit of fear, and just taking precautions every day to prevent bad things that could happen to us. An example of that is when we leave our house, we lock our doors. Why do we do that? Because somebody might come to our door, somebody might try to open it, they might get in, they might take our stuff. We leave the house, we lock our doors. We get in our car, we put our seatbelt on. Why? Might get into a car accident. Probably won't. But the probability exists that it could happen, so we wear a seatbelt. When we get to Walmart, we get out of our car, we lock our car. Why? There could be somebody going on pulling on door handles and just seeing if they can get inside your car, and possibility of being stolen or stealing the stuff inside. We do things like this, not necessarily because we're afraid it could happen. It's just the possibilities exist that it could, and these are just little things we do throughout the day to take proper precautions. It doesn't mean that we're living in fear. Some people might. Some people might be living in fear. But for most people, doing these little things throughout the day doesn't mean we're living in a state of fear or a state of panic. It's just precautions. Now, here's the thing. You wear a mask in public, and you try not to stand too close to people. I do these things. Am I afraid of the virus? No, I'm not afraid of it at all. The whole thing is that if the fear of the virus, or the fear of the burglar, or the fear of being in a car accident, if all these things cause you emotional distress to the point of wrecking your life, then you're committing a sin. If you neglect yourself, others, or the fear drives a wedge between you and God, that is sin. Now, fear not is the most repeated phrase in the Bible, and it seems like God's trying to get some kind of point across to us. And my favorite of all these fear not phrases comes from David in Psalm 56. He says, "When I am afraid, I will trust in you. In God, whose word I praise, in God I trust, I will not be afraid. What can a mortal man do to me?" Now, interesting to note, he starts off and he says, "When I'm afraid." So there's fear right there. He's feeling fear. I will trust in you. He puts that fear onto God. When he does that, in God I trust, I will not be afraid. So he's taken the normal, everyday human fear that we fear about things, and he puts it on God, and he trusts in God. And then when he trusts in God, he no longer fears. What can a mortal man do to me? When God is for you, there's nobody that can be against you. You've got the creator of the universe and you on your side. Nobody can hurt you. Now, another example of fear is when Jesus and his disciples are in the boat. And they're in the boat, they're out in the middle of the water, and a huge storm comes on them and threatens to kill them all. The disciples are paralyzed with fear, but they find Jesus sleeping through all of it. They wake him up, and he immediately calms the storm. He looks over at them and says, "Why are you afraid? Do you still not have faith?" Now that might sound a little like a harsh thing to say, but you got to consider that the literal Son of God is right there with you in the midst of the storm, and he is so very unconcerned about the lethality of it that he's dead asleep. That's not a pun. The takeaway is that God goes through whatever storm you have in your life in lockstep. You can bet that God is not afraid, just like Jesus wasn't afraid of the storm. If you keep your eyes on God that isn't afraid in the midst of whatever storm you're in, you won't be afraid either. The only reason the disciples were afraid of the storm is because they weren't looking at the sleeping Jesus as a sign that they also should be unconcerned and not be afraid. So, the whole point of that story is the storm in that can be a metaphor for any storm that happens in our life. Look at your life as you're in a boat, and Jesus is with you in that boat. And the storm can be whatever is going on. It doesn't have to be the pandemic. A pandemic is a great example, but take the example of the pandemic. We're in a boat. We're with Jesus. The pandemic is all around us. It's threatening to kill us all. But Jesus is unconcerned, and he says, "Why are you afraid?" We're looking out the boat, and we're seeing all these things happen. We're seeing the pandemic happen. We're seeing people get sick and whatever, and we're going to Jesus. We're waking him up, saying, "Don't you care that this virus is out here killing everybody?" And he says, "Why are you afraid? do you still not have faith? I think the metaphor works. I think it works pretty well. Now, so, the point of all this, the thing that we need to learn, and I'll reiterate what I'm talking about, is we need to understand that taking caution, operating in fear, is not the same thing. And here's how we know the difference. I talked about, when we go out of the house, we lock our doors. Well, if my doors didn't have locks on them, if I couldn't lock my door, I'm still not afraid of a burglar. If my car didn't have seatbelts, still not afraid of a wreck. If my car doesn't lock, still not afraid of a thief. If fire extinguishers were not a thing, I'm still not afraid of my house catching on fire. You see what I'm saying? Now, and also with this, going along with the pandemic, if I couldn't wear a mask and the doctor said there's no vaccine for this virus, I'm still don't have any fear over it. I'm still not afraid. Either way, whether there's a vaccine, whether there's a mask, whatever, it doesn't change my attitude. And that's the whole thing. We have to maintain the right attitude no matter what fearful thing comes on in our life. Now, your attitude about fear says more than your actions. You can wear a mask from now until Judgment Day. That's completely fine. You can wear a mask from now until forever. That's not a sin. You can get a vaccine for every single virus or disease available. These things in and of themselves are not a sin. The attitude behind it is. The faith you put in these things versus God is what causes them to be a sin. If you are crippled by fear of this pandemic and you just became a bubble boy and you were so afraid to go outside, you were so afraid of other people, you were neglecting yourself, you were neglecting other people that needed you, you were allowing it to drive a wedge between you and God. If that was you during this pandemic, and then now all of a sudden you have a vaccine and you've completely done a 180 and you're excited and you're jumping up and down, you're doing all these things, you're going out, you're not wearing a mask, you're just as happy as can be and don't have any fear, therein lies the problem, is that you start to put more faith into a vaccine than you're putting faith into God. Your attitude doesn't need to change on the virus just because you got a vaccine and the doctors are saying, well, now you're protected. You're protected anyway. God protects us anyway. Now, don't misunderstand. Getting a vaccine is not a sin. It's not. Don't click off this video and say, well, Devin told me I got a vaccine, so I'm just committed to sin. I need to go repent. Nope. Do not. Get that out of here. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm talking about your attitude. Are you getting the vaccine because you're scared to death that some virus is going to kill you? Or are you getting the vaccine just because it's a precaution, can't hurt anything, it's fine? It totally depends on your attitude about it. I hope you all can understand what I'm saying. I'll say one more time. Wearing a mask, getting a vaccine is not a sin, nor is it a sign of fear. Although for some people, it is a sign of fear. But like I said, we're talking about the attitude here. The key here is that even if we couldn't wear a mask and there was no vaccine, that we still are not afraid of the virus or whatever else we're facing. Precaution is fine and good, but if we can't take precautions, we can't let that affect our attitude and our faith in God. So, I'll leave you with one more verse here, and it comes from 1 John 4:18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made in perfect love. Now, what's that mean? Well, what John's talking about is not exactly the same thing I'm talking about. He talks about the fear having to do with punishment. Have you ever met Christians and you ask them, say, well, are you going to heaven? And they say, buddy, I don't know. I believe in God and I try my best every day, but I just don't know if I'm going to heaven. That's what John's talking about here. We have to know that we're going to heaven. We have to come to a point where we know that if I die today, I'm out of here. I'm going to heaven. There ain't no bones about it. That's exactly what he's talking about here. But it can also be applied to other areas, other fearful areas of our lives. We already know that fear does not come from God. We know this. And there is no fear in love. Perfect love drives out fear. The one who fears is not made in perfect love. If you're still dealing with crippling fear of this pandemic or anything else, if there's anything else going on at night or going on that causes you to lose sleep at night, and it causes you so much anxiety, that is not from God. And God, He wants your attitude to change. He wants your attitude to change, and be more focused on Him. And He doesn't want you to be afraid. He wants you to cast all that on Him. It doesn't mean that being not afraid doesn't mean that we're careless. It doesn't mean that we just go out and just do whatever we want to do. We jump in our cars and we drive 90 miles an hour down the highway, swerving in and out of traffic. That's not what not being afraid means. I think I shouldn't have to say that to you all, and I don't think I really have to. But not being afraid and it's not the same thing as being careless. But yeah. Well, that's what I need to say, and I feel like it sounded like a jumbled mess, but I hope that y'all got something out of it. The key thing is examine your attitude about the things that you're afraid of. See if they line up biblically, and if you're finding that it doesn't. If you don't feel good about being afraid of whatever it is you're afraid of, then you need to cast that onto God and let Him take that spirit of fear from you. Pray against the spirit of fear that you're living in, and know the difference between feeling it as just a normal human emotion and then versus the spirit of fear that comes from the enemy. It comes from Satan. He does it. He puts it on us. It's a totally different feeling. So try to understand what the difference is between that. And if you feel like that you're being oppressed by the spirit of fear, then we need to pray that away. And if you've lived your life under that and under the spirit of fear, and fear has caused you to be disobedient, then that's something you need to deal with. And I'll leave you there. And I appreciate y'all watching. I got this second video out now. Something that God's just been laying on me to talk about. I hope it's a clear message. I hope you all understand. I ain't harping on you. I feel like I am. I feel like I'm beating y'all up. But that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to do what I'm supposed to do. And God gives me messages, and Talking about the fear and the pandemic, especially, it's been something that God's had it on my heart for over a month or month and a half, and I can't seem to get away from it. And I just feel like I gotta get the message out there. And I just hope to help somebody. That's all I'm trying to do. And if it helped you, that's fantastic. If it didn't, that's all right too. Maybe I'll have something else to say later on, and help you with maybe a situation you're going through. But I'm just going to talk about what God tells me to talk about, and that's all I'm going to do. So I'll talk to you later. I'll put out a third video. Could be soon, could be a month from now, could be just whenever God lays something on me. But I'll get it out there, and I'll let y'all know about it. I just appreciate y'all watching, and I'll be talking to you real soon again. All right, we'll see you.